definitely what's really going on right now. It's an adventure, and let me double check that we have open stream that is happening. It says it's waiting for me. Let's see. Come on. That's this is why we test. Late night sketch is up. Maybe it's waiting for something. Let's see. Why? Oh, there it is. Just I guess it's waiting for the internet and all that stuff to go and happen. Let me double check that we have sound. There we go. And there it is. So I am waiting for myself, and there it goes. Okay, so we're good to go. That is just how it goes in the beginning when you start off a live stream. And it's a special live stream tonight because it's my first time using my green screen. I was doing some live streaming last night. I was in an awesome studio. They had Matt Franklin has this big old green screen behind the drawing table, and it was beautiful. And so I think it's time for me to show off the art that I do in conjunction with a picture of myself, and the blank part behind me is filled in with the artwork that I'm working on. So that's why it makes it special. And if you're here, then it's much more special because of you. How about that? All right, cool. Let's go ahead and just jump into what I'm here to do. I'm going to take 10 minutes to talk about what my process is when drawing with Sketchable app. Sketchable app, as you know, if you've watched this channel and seen some of my live streams on Facebook, is a drawing application that runs on Windows. It is specifically made for the Surface Pro or the Surface line of computers by Microsoft. The awesome people at Silicon Benders have been really great for the last few years that I've been working with them and collaborating and using their application and drawing some of the work that I do for my clients and for myself, including this drawing that you see here behind me. It is an illustration that I created for the summer camp for girls in Atlanta. They learn how to code and build robots, and it's called Buttercup Steam. And so you will see some of this artwork on the website real soon, buttercupsteam.io. All right, tell them I sent you. And so I've been working on some artwork, personal, professional, and I start in Sketchable. And so one of the questions that I get all the time is, how do you get rid of the background after working in Sketchable and building the illustration? How do you get rid of the background so that you can give the client a flat PNG where the background is transparent so that they can use it in other ways, and with that transparent background so they can show whatever they want to see? And so my answer is very simple, and I'm going to take you through that process right now. Are we ready? All right, let's go ahead and switch cameras. I got Cinemaker over here doing the video on one side, doing the visual capture of the screen, and that's what you see behind me. So my process is very simple, and I'll go a little bit further than just the process, but I'm going to show you some of the layers that it takes to build an illustration like the one I'm showing you. So a lot of my drawings start off with just with a lot of sketching, a lot of working on the figure and composition of what I have in mind, until it looks like something that I'm going to actually want to keep. Then I get to a point where I clean up the lines with a brush, ink brush, digital ink brush, and work on the lines so that they can come clean and crispy and show you the figure that I want to include in the illustration. From there, I work my way into flat colors, and recently I learned a new trick with Photoshop, so I will be doing a lot of coloring in with Photoshop real soon. But I do my flat colors on one layer, and with Sketchable and really with Sketchable and even Photoshop, sometimes I put all my color in one layer, and usually I like to keep my colors separate in separate layers, so that way if I need to change something or tweak it, it's real easy to just single out that layer and make some adjustments. I do keep all my colors separate when it comes to Illustrator, and I think that because it's a vector illustration, it doesn't get really heavy. It doesn't get the computer doesn't get bogged down with all the data that's in all the layers. But when it comes to Photoshop or Sketchable, I think I want to keep it simple in order to let me work through the whole illustration. So in this case here, we have a layer for the color. I'll go ahead and turn on the background layer. As you can see, I threw a background in there, and then I slowly build the details of the illustration. And let's go ahead and zoom in, and you can see that this is the highlights, some of the highlights, this layer. It has the lips and some highlights in the hair. Then I have another layer where's the light. There's a light source. So the light source is coming from the left. Let's see which is my left. This is the that's the left in your screen, which is my same left. That's kind of cool. And so the light is coming over here from the left, and you can see some highlights on the right side of the body of the illustration, and then some yellow highlights to show the glow of what she has in her hand, which is a gear. It's a floating gear and it's glowing. So there's definitely some yellow glow that is shining on the body, coming off of the gear that's in her hand. And now I want to add the shadows, and so I add some harsh shadows to there's a word for the kind of shadows that you put in, and there's two kinds. One kind is for the area of the folds of the body and corners where there's very little light, so you end up with an ambient shadow, I think, and then there's a shadow for the shape to give it volume and dimension. So right now this is the kind of shadow where some of the crooks and crannies, what is it, how do you say, nooks and crannies do not get light, so they're going to end up darker than the areas that get light or are out in the open. And then I go in, I turned it all on, and then I go in with another shadow where it gives it more dramatic effect and makes everything look more 3D. So in this case, I do not have that extra shadow. Sometimes I get a little crazy with the layers, and I quoted this awesome artist that I follow. I quoted him earlier today on my Instagram. So check out my Delta Tango Mike Instagram if you want to see that, the artwork that I posted when I quoted my friend. He's my friend now, okay? All right. But he says one of his quotes is layers are free. And the idea is that once you have the software and you start working with illustrations or working with drawings and you're painting digitally, do not be limited by what you can do with one layer. Add another layer, try different things, use different opacities, and find your way to seeing, to rendering your illustration to the point where you're really happy about what you got there. All right, so right now what you see is the finished illustration. This is how I'm going to go with this one. I have all my layers, they're all on, and I'm going to go ahead and start Photoshop just because I know it's going to take a second. So there it goes, Photoshop is starting up, but let me go back to Sketchable. And so while I'm here in Sketchable, I'm going to go up to the settings, and if Photoshop lets me, come on, settings are on the top left, and let me, it's not responding to my finger. I'm gonna have to grab, good thing I have the pen right here. All right, so there we go. See the settings, they pop over on the left. Then it says File, Export. So I can export this whole page as a Photoshop file, a PSD. So let's call it a name, and that's the Buttercup folder right now. So I'm gonna call it just the letter B and gear, right? B gear, and then hit save. So right now, as you can see, my save as file type says Photoshop file. I think there's other file types including PNG, JPEG, TIFF, and bitmap, but I don't want those because then that's going to flatten out the illustration and it's going to keep that background locked in. Then I'm going to have to open in Photoshop and do a whole lot of cleanup, which I can avoid just by exporting as a Photoshop file. So we're going to keep that Photoshop file, hit enter or save, and just wait for it. There it goes. It's thinking. You can see the little circle turning, turning, turning. Very good. Come on, computer. And so now this computer, even though the Surface line is great, this is a 16 gigabytes of RAM Surface Pro 4. I do have Photoshop open, and it's trying to create a Photoshop file out of the Sketchable illustration. So it's going to take some brain power to make it happen. So let's go ahead and open Photoshop and click on open and look for my folder. I keep everything organized. Buttercup, there she is. There it is, B gear. So let's double check that exported everything. Okay, so that is working. Everything in Sketchable is back to normal. So let me minimize that, and I can see the Photoshop file for B gear. Tap it and wait. There, boom! Look at that. No waiting around. It just popped right in, and of course it's sideways because when I was drawing in Sketchable, I had a landscape style of artboard, and so I flipped it just so I can do the drawing that I wanted. And so when it exported the way it was supposed to, landscape. So no big deal. What I'm going to do right now is go to image and image rotate. I want the counterclockwise 90%. There it is. Bam. So now straight up and down. It's a portrait style, and as you can see, everything is translated very well. I'm looking at this image at 277%, and it looks clean. Let me tell you, that is good. Let's turn on, and I know I'm going a little bit extra, sorry. Let's turn on the ruler. So the rulers are on. There it is. Okay, yeah. So my canvas is 8.5 and by 11.5. So this is a good size illustration that is raster, and it will translate very well. Of course, web is going to be fine. And you can print it up to 18 by 24 maybe. What's the size before that? 12 by 16. I think that's going to be fine. So that 11 by 17, I think that's going to be fine size. So because it's a 300 DPI, so you got a little bit of wiggle room depending on how you print it. But let's go ahead and look at why we came here, right? Let's open our layers, and if I open my layers window, you'll notice all the layers that were on Sketchable, they're alive. Come on, Adobe. All the layers that were on Sketchable file, they translated all the way through to the Photoshop file, and they open in Photoshop, and they're alive in this Photoshop file right now. So I can now click on the eyeball and turn them off, and you can see right through the illustration. I could have deleted those layers in the Sketchable file, but I wanted to have that purple background. And you want to just, no matter what, you're going to have to export to Photoshop, and you'll still have all those layers in there. So don't worry about it. Just go ahead and bring it in, and then you can do what you want to do to the file in Photoshop. And as you can see, all my layers are editable. There it is. I'm turning things off and on. When you click on the eyeball, that's how you make things turn off. And they did not delete it. They're just turned off. And so now here's my drawing. It's good to go. I'm going to save this as a version. Save as. You always save new versions. You never just save the same file over itself, because at some time in the future you may feel like, oh, you know what, I have a different idea what I could have done with that. And so then you can just open the original file and start all over and not worry about all the edits that you've done since. So right now it says V gear. I'm going to do a capital V for version, and then the number 2. There it is. And always put a number, a version number to your files. Here's another tip. Never final, never the date, never, oh, this is for so-and-so, names, people's names. Unless you're sending a specific file, you can change the name then. But and they require the file name to be a particular way. But right now, when you're working through an illustration or some client work, you want to put a version on it. So that way, when you send off something to a client and you pay attention to what version you're sending them, sometimes they may ask for something that you've done in the past, and then you can check your versions and then pull up that one file that you did before, and not have to go back and edit again to make it to where it was before when what they're asking you for. So anyway, sorry, it's a long explanation. All right, cool. So B Gear version 2, Photoshop, we're good. Save. Okay, it's going to ask maximum compatibility. Say okay. Now we're going to have some fun. Go to your layer menu, click down on flatten image, boom, now everything is gone, all your layers is gone, and you know what, that was the wrong one. All right, it flattened it out and it gave me back the white background, so that's not the way to do it. Layer, merge visible. So right now we turned off the background layer and that color layer that was behind the character, so we don't want those to come back, so we're going to merge all visible layers. There it is, done. And just to clean up, we're going to touch this layer 2, put in the trash can, layer 1, trash can, done. Now it's all one flat image, all my layers are flattened out, but there's no background. And so now we're going to go to File, Save As, and now you pull that PNG, and it's right here. Boom, B Gear version 2 PNG. Hit save. Hold on, not save. Yeah, that's what it was. Save as PNG. I looked away from the screen and I forgot what I was doing. B Gear version 2 PNG. We got it. Hit save. It's going to ask you for a large file size, etc. Yes, of course. Hit OK. And now saving. Done saving. Let's look in the folder. Let's open up. I do everything through Dropbox, so now I can click on the folder, and there it is. B Gear version 2. I have the original B Gear that I brought in from Sketchable. I have B Gear version 2, the Photoshop file that I cleaned up, and it still has all the layers that are in the file, including the ones I turned off. And then I have the B Gear version 2 PNG, and when I click on it, you'll notice there is no background. So wherever you lay this image on, whether it's online or in print, web, mobile, all of those things, you'll have a clear background. You can see the background through the sides of this illustration, and it can stand against any background, and you can still see what's behind it. So there it is. That's the trick and the tips on how to go from a sketchable drawing, export it as a Photoshop file, open in Photoshop, clean it up, flatten it out, merge the visible layers, not flatten the whole thing, but merge the visible layers, and then export it as a PNG and use it in whatever you want to do from now on. All right, I'm DTM. Find me anywhere on the internet, Delta Tango Mike. You are watching the Vector Maestros channel on YouTube. Please subscribe, hit the like button, share, tell the world about us, because we're out here having fun, exploring Illustrator, exploring digital drawing, and having a good time. All right, talk to y'all later. Peace out. DTM. Let me close some of these things just so that we can see my picture. Yes, I like it.